Hi, I'm Dr. Tim Silvestri. I'm Director of Counseling Services at Muhlenberg College. And I'm here to talk to you today about alcohol and the brain. Most times when I ask students, so is alcohol a depressant or a stimulant? They're spot on. They know it, it's a depressant. However, what students often don't know, and what I want to talk to you about, is what that looks like inside the brain. So in fact, alcohol actually depresses your brain from front to back, or even from outer gray area down to white matter and your brainstem. And so what you're watching when you see someone drinking to various levels of intoxication, if they get that far, you're actually seeing neuroscience in action. So let's start out with just explaining a little of the color schema that you'll be seeing during a presentation. What you're going to notice is that different areas of the brain will go from green, meaning it's only been slightly impaired through alcohol, but it's still functioning at high levels, to yellow, which means it's starting to become more and more depressed based on increasing levels of intoxication, and that yellow suggests that it's starting to become impaired where it's not functioning quite right, to black, the final level, which means that area of your brain has actually shut down temporarily because of the excessive amounts of alcohol affecting that area of the brain. And if we ran this all the way through, we could actually run the whole brain through to black, and then slowly, as the person returns to sobriety, turn it back to yellow, and then eventually back to green, where the brain's fully functioning again. So let's start with the initial effects. The initial effects being that alcohol, when it first starts affecting your brain, like we've said, it affects the front region. There's a little area behind your eye socket. It's called an orbital frontal cortex. And basically that area behind both eye sockets is one of the main integration centers of the brain for higher reasoning. It helps you to be the person you are. It manifests into personality and into conscious reasoning and doing the things that you like to do that are really authentic to you. It produces a lot of problem-solving capabilities, and those get translated into, we could easily say, what ifs. So there's a lot of what ifs that happen as a result of that orbital frontal cortex being active. People often report one of the best effects of alcohol is that they feel a little less inhibited. And on a neuroscience level, that makes sense. If you're shutting down your what if part of your brain just slightly, it's still functioning enough to be authentic, but it's not functioning so well that you're getting all those what ifs. And so we would expect it to feel a little bit more like a stimulant, a little bit more like what some folks call a social lubricant, social scientists call it that, or what students say is it lowers my inhibitions. As you keep drinking, what you'll notice next, if you were hanging around someone who kept drinking beyond that more positive effect stage, is that people get louder. They get louder and louder as they drink because we're affecting now another part of the brain with that new level of intoxication, somewhere around 0.1 BAC, blood alcohol concentration, though there's a range of that. So at around 0.1, you would expect people to start getting louder, basically because they're shutting down some of the sensory integration centers of the brain, which are located in the gray matter up here. And so if you're not able to integrate some of that sensory information, then you're not going to do well managing it. And that's why people get louder, even obnoxiously loud sometimes. But the other thing that happens around 0.1 is we can see on the animation that you're starting to see some yellow show up here in the frontal region of your brain. So at 0.1, what happens is you're starting to shut down that frontal region, that integration center of your brain. And now not only are you lowering your inhibitions or getting the stimulant kind of effects of it, even though it's a depressant, but you're also now shutting down your authenticity. And so what we know is after about 0.1, people report to greater levels that they did things during that state that they later regretted. In other words, they start acting in ways that aren't consistent with who they really are as a person. About 0.15, you start affecting more deep regions of your brain, probably beyond the gray matter, and now we're affecting white matter in your brain, and those are a little bit deeper. And so what you would notice visibly with people is they become less coordinated, they drop things, they become clumsy, they become louder, they aren't managing their social situations very well. And what we know is students overwhelmingly report that as people get more and more drunk, they basically get more and more annoying. And again, on a neuroscience level, that makes sense. If you're shutting down these reasoning parts of your brain and now you're going deeper, you're going to become more and more intrusive, more and more annoying, and less fun to hang out with. And you're starting to become emotionally dysregulated. Because about 2 inches back from your brain, there's a thing called an anterior cingulate cortex. Let's not get hung up on the technicals. But basically, that's an emotional regulation center. And so people at now 0.15, which is visibly intoxicated, though not terribly so intoxicated, they're incapacitated, that they start becoming emotionally dysregulated. They laugh, they cry, they hug you, they want to get in a fight. They're all over the map emotionally. The other thing that happens, though, and I think this is so important for students, for any of us who choose to drink alcohol to understand, is at around that 0.15 level, you're affecting a deeper region of brain, and that is called your nucleus accumbens. And that's, neuroscientists call, your fun center of your brain. Because when that's lit up, you're having more fun, you're laughing heartily. You can't laugh and not have that part of your brain lit up. And so what we see is students often will drink because they think it makes things more fun. But they keep drinking and they think more is more. And as they keep drinking, they're actually doing the opposite, because they not only shut down some of those what ifs, but now they're shutting down their fun center of their brain. One place to kind of shoot for, I guess, if you were drinking and that was your choice, is the best effects are going to happen right up to that level of around slurred speech. Once you start slurring your speech, you're starting to incapacitate some deeper regions of your brain. We could expect that maybe somewhere around 0.12, 0.14-ish, but certainly by those areas, and certainly by about 0.15-ish, we're depressing deeper regions of the brain. So staying below that slurred speech level, you have full access to the fun centers of your brain, you're diminishing some of those what-ifs, and you're not losing all the other things. So the next thing that happens around 0.2-ish is, if you notice from the animation, we're going to see now the front region of the brain is blacked out. Now someone's visibly intoxicated. It's not a mystery to anyone they've been drinking. And that makes sense again. We're depressing to deeper and deeper levels. We're depressing brain regions. And so students often, if I ask them, what's a blackout? They'll often say, well, a blackout is when I can't remember anything from the night before. And that's true. We can use it in that way. But what's actually happening is you're blacking out your brain from front to back, right? There's varying levels of intoxication. And so as it continues to affect each brain region, turn it from green to yellow, which is kind of browning out, to black, which is blacking out, we're going to see that from front to back. And so the first region that gets blacked out is your frontal lobe. And so without that, you become really, honestly, no different than a squirrel running around a park. You can do things, you might dance, you might hang out with friends, you might have conversations. None of them are going to be very good. You're becoming more and more annoying to the people around you because you're becoming less and less human. And importantly, your authenticity is really put on the shelf. So at around 0.25, we're going to see many more things happen. We're going to see now that the whole cerebral cortex, the gray matter in your brain, is getting blacked out, and now it's starting to affect white matter all the way through, getting blacked out. And so at that point, someone is visibly intoxicated. They aren't able to function very well on their own. They may or may not have vomited at this point. They're really hitting higher levels of intoxication. And then at 0.3, what you would notice is shutting down of that deep region of your brain. Now we're starting to shut down what scientists call the limbic system. And that includes areas like the amygdala and hippocampus. And basically what those things do is their memory relay centers. And so as you're blacking out those little parts of this inner part of your brain, you can't remember that block of time. And so as you shut down that, you have no ability to remember those events that occurred during that time span because they were never laid down as memories. Hypnosis, nothing else can bring those times back. they were never recorded in the first place. And those memories won't start working again. In other words, you won't start being able to remember again until your BAC, your blood alcohol level, drops below that kind of 0.3-ish level. One thing that we don't recognize, though, if you notice from the animation, you're going to see that while the limbic system is blacked out, the brainstem and cerebellum back here are starting to yellow. And so what's happening that people don't know, when you can't remember something, a block of time from the night before, what was actually also happening simultaneous to that is your brainstem is starting to shut down. And if you check someone's breathing during the time that they were blacked out, you would see that it's a more shallow and less frequent breath. And so they're actually only a few drinks away at that point from dying, if their brainstem were to shut down. Now, these are very rare instances, and it's rare that people get that intoxicated. And it's extremely rare that if someone is that intoxicated, we walk up and say, hey, why don't you have a bunch more to drink? Because they've already had so much, we're clearly saying you've had too much. But if that person somehow found the way to alcohol at a point of blackout, 0.3, they might only be about 1 to 3 drinks away from a lethal dose of alcohol. And so we say blackout, I think, in too much of a cavalier manner. When someone is blacked out, it really is, on a biological, physiological level, a much more serious level of intoxication than we recognize. With only a few more drinks, we could lose a friend. And then we would see about 0.35. 0.35, you would see the cerebellum blackout. That's your area of your brain that controls basically coordination. So there you would have someone who is at that point unable to stand. If any of your friends are to the point where they cannot stand without being held up, at that point, maybe even before then, but definitely, absolutely 100% at that point, we want to call for medical help. Because at that point, if they can't stand on their own, that means really deep regions of their brain are shutting down, and there is now, we're starting to enter a pretty good chance of some negative outcome such as death. And so at that point, we want to get medical attention. And then at 0.4, blood alcohol poisoning would take full hold, and there you would see a shutting down of first your reticular formation. Someone's passed out, you can't wake them up. They're not passed out, they're in an alcohol-induced coma, and then eventually their medulla would shut down and they would lose their capacity to breathe. Of the students who do hit that point and actually die of alcohol poisoning, they very frequently will have writing all over their face. And so what we have is students not recognizing the dangers. We associate alcohol only with fun. And so here they were right next to their friend. They could have called for help. They misread all the cues, and they didn't, and they lost a friend. And so what we want to do is just to know the physiology and know at these levels, you shouldn't be writing on someone's face. You absolutely have to be calling for medical attention. I hope you know that my goal isn't to scare you or tell you scary stories and do all that. This isn't a just say no message. Really, I'm not here to tell you to start drinking, stop drinking, or anything like that. It's really just to present to you the facts, the neuroscience, the neurophysiology of it, and from a basic concept that alcohol does depress your brain from front to back. If you choose to drink, you can use that information to really get a more positive outcome that you're seeking. That positive outcome is going to be associated with drinking right up to or before that level of slurred speech. As soon as you start feeling a little bit of slurred speech, that's your signal. Absolutely shut it down, because the next thing you're going to shut down is your nucleus accumbens, and that's your fun center. And some of my research shows that at least 90% of students report drunk people as highly annoying. So not only are you not having more fun, but others around you are experiencing you as more and more annoying. And that doesn't sound much fun to me. If you want further information, I hope you do reach out. Either visit our website. There's a lot of great information on there. Call us in the counseling center or stop by. And I hope to see you before you graduate. About half of you actually do come through the counseling center, before you graduate, and those numbers are growing every year. Have a great semester.